Okay, morning everyone. A couple of minutes past, so we will get started. And thank you for joining us for our latest in a series of Sizewell C Supply Chain Business Support Program webinars. Today, mastering bid writing, trying to give you some best practices for winning some of these proposals that are going to happen on the Sizewell C project over the course of the next 10 to 12 years. Today's subject is one we've been asked for on a regular basis over the past few months as we've been doing the other sessions. So hopefully today will give some great insights into this subject and help some of our local and regional business secure even more work on Sizewell C. As a quick introduction, my name is Shorey-Mills. I'm the Sizewell C Supply Chain Engagement Director here at the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce has been working on the Sizewell project for about 13 years now, and excitedly in the last year been able to start really putting into practice some of our preparation work that we've been doing over that time to supporting businesses to work on this project. A little bit of a plan of what you're going to have today. So I'll do my normal little brief introduction to bits and pieces to do with our role and to do with Sizewell. Before we hand over to our two main speakers, we have Jayne Gooch from Plain Purpose and Paddy Bacchus, who's part of the Civil Works Alliance at Sizewell, who will touch on some bits around bid writing and tendering. Before it comes back to myself to give a little bit of a commercial overview of the process of Sizewell C before we do Q&A. Now, as always with these webinar series, the Q&A session is vital. We want you to hear lots of information today, but we also really want your questions. So please make sure you've got the chat function, the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Any questions you've got throughout the whole presentation, please put them on the Q&A. We will then monitor them throughout and then make sure that they are answered towards the end of the session. And also, please use the chat function. Let us know you're here, who you are, especially if you've been working on the project. As always, we love to hear success stories. And we know there's already hundreds of companies working on the site in various different guises and various different ways. And a huge proportion of them are already local and regional. And very soon, we hope to be able to publish some really quite impressive stats on the amount of local spend that's already taking place on site. We're recording these webinars, as we always do, and they will be hosted on our website. And hopefully by some point next week, this webinar will be on there with all the content from today. So just as a first couple of slides, when we always talk about our aims, if you like, our key drivers for our role, well, it's important we reflect on actually what Sizewell C's project, the Sizewell C project strategic aims are. And you can see the overriding ones at the top there to do with what Sizewell and the government want to get out of Sizewell and the purpose of it. It is for giving us low carbon power, but actually it's for doing so much more. But importantly, those three bottom boxes, they are the contractual appendices that exist that mean the supply chain will deliver on its ESG requirements and what the Sizewell C project wants to achieve from the building of this nuclear power plant. So social value hits into there massively. Obviously, the supply chain plays a key role within that, as do people. And it's very important that everything that's done through our work and obviously through the bid writing that you'll see today, through the tender opportunities you're going to have coming through, they will always all reflect back to these key strategic aims of Sizewell C. And when we talk about social value, it is these key 5 areas. We always like to focus on goal 1 because that's where we fit in. That local and regional supply chain aim of Sizewell C fits nicely into the ESG social value themes of the project. And you'll see importantly on there, it is about championing UK content, but prioritizing local, then regional, then national. So it's making sure that if local businesses can deliver this project effectively on time and safely and on budget, that they have that chance to play a part. But also that then all businesses, both national and local, do invest in education and in skills, both of future workforce, but also their existing workforce, that we all work together to reduce the impact on the environment of construction of Sizewell and future large-scale projects that are happening in this region, that we do work to increase the diversity and inclusivity of our industries and really make sure that Suffolk is one of the most diverse places to work, and that how we embrace the opportunities for all the local communities that are going to be impacted by Sizewell, but actually, again, as Suffolk PLC, how we make sure that the opportunities spread across all of Suffolk, not just key towns and cities. Our key themes remain the same. We want to ensure we're promoting local. Yes, we're the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce, but we're working on behalf of members, working on behalf of the 6 counties of the East, whether they are members of the Chamber, members of other business organisations, or just a business that exists in its own right. We don't mind. We are there to support you on this project, to get you ready for it, and to make sure we maximise this opportunity. We want to ensure we do that because we need a legacy for this region post-construction of Sizewell C that is befitting of this part of the world. We have lots of other major infrastructure projects, which we're very fortunate to have, but it's about how we build businesses up so that they are sustainable and proportionately growing throughout the build of Sizewell, so that they can continue to employ the same people and the same skills and continue to develop in the future in the best way possible. And of course, we also want to make sure that the UK government's ambition of 2050 net zero is achieved through Sizewell C, but every part of the supply chain has a role to play in that by decarbonising the way in which we do our jobs. And of course, you've then got the actual commitment itself. 4.4 billion to our region is nothing to be sniffed at. And we are, as I said earlier, already seeing many millions spent to our local businesses and regional businesses. And like I said, we'll very soon be able to produce some statistics that we'll be able to share with you all on that. But it's very pleasing to see a number of local businesses already working on site. Still just scratching the surface at the moment with regards to the work that's happening. But that opportunity of 4.4 billion is there to ensure that Sizewell is built using local firms as much as is suitable and possible, but then also that that's investment in the region to help us grow for future opportunities, both in the nuclear sector, because of the growth of UK nuclear with GB Nuclear and GB Energy, but also the opportunity in other sectors where skills from constructing something like Sizewell C will be hugely beneficial. And of course, how do we support? Well, I've highlighted a couple on there in particular because they're relevant to today. We are there to help you be introduced to the right people at the right time. I know sometimes businesses get frustrated because we can't introduce them to a tier one tomorrow, but that's in the main because maybe the tier ones don't exist yet. Maybe they're not the right time for that part of the project, but rest assured, as a team, the moment we can get you talking to the right people, we will do. But it's also helping you understand all of those other aspects. And I'm sure today, things like contracting requirements, bid writing, how you can get that funding and that training and that support that you need, and also focusing on social value and our portals. Every part of what we do within this role is to work for Sizewell, to help them hit their commitments, to work with the tier ones and the alliances, like you're going to hear from Paddy later, for what they need and who they need to be talking to across our region. But then also it's to work for you. And like today, we're doing this webinar because of feedback from our members from the supply chain. Some of the 2,800 odd businesses that are signed up with us now. So it is vitally important. Keep reaching out to our team, talking to us about what you need, and let us inform you what actions you can be taking so that you're best placed when those opportunities do start coming forward. And of course, I mentioned it earlier, this isn't about a Chamber of Commerce thing. It's about a Sizewell thing. It's about the whole of our region. And we're there to be that link between the project and the region. So if you're on today, you're probably signed up to our portal already. That's how you were alerted to it. Thank you. Fantastic. Keep that going. But we want to keep talking to as many groups, as many organizations as possible. It's about connecting everything together and us convening that into one place that can then support Sizewell. So please reach out to us as well if you want us to speak at events, if you want us to come and talk to groups of businesses, come and see you. Our team are there to give you that link into the project, particularly focused on supply chain. But then obviously we can help when it's communities, whether it's charities, whether it's skills, whatever it may be, we can help link into the right people in the project so we maximise the benefit for Suffolk from Sizewell C. So at that point, I will be quiet and I will hand you over to Emma, who can introduce herself and to start talking about the bid writing side of things.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much. So good morning, everyone. I'm Emma Jayne Gooch and I run a company called Plain Purpose. Now, although I am currently based in West Cumbria, I am born and bred in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. So I'm absolutely delighted to be running this session for you today. So if we could go on to the next slide, please, Ashley. What I want to do is, from today, I want to help you understand some of the acronyms. When you're bidding, and certainly when you're bidding for the nuclear industry, there are so many acronyms that you need to understand. So I'm going to run through that for you. I'm going to explain how to write a tender response, common mistakes and how to avoid them. And then something that I specialize in when I'm writing tenders is social impact. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of social impact for tenders. So my experience, I do bid writing and bid reviewing from small SME businesses right the way through to the large national organizations who are bidding on multi-billion pound frameworks. Next slide, please. So understanding the acronyms, I want to run through. Now, these slides are a little bit wordy. I'm not going to read off the slides, don't worry, but I am going to pull out some really key information that's really important. So actually, before we even get to the first point on here, which is the PQQ, you may see something called a PIN notice. Now, a PIN notice stands for prior information notice. And a lot of public sector will use this to understand what is going on in the market and to get views from the supply chain. And the sorts of thing that this PIN might include is commercial models. So the supply chain are able to comment on which commercial model fits them best. Also construct whether they're going to go out in small packages or large packages. And again, you can give that response as to which works best for yourselves. They'll also use pins just to let you know that there is a procurement coming up that might be of interest to you. So the first part of bidding is what's known as a PQQ, which is the pre-qualification questionnaire. And basically, what the organisation is trying to do is ascertain whether you are right to deliver work for them. And when I say right, things they'll be looking at is company information. Have you got the correct insurance? Have you got the correct financial standing? So there'll be lots of data-driven questions around finances, insurances, and also things around accreditations and qualifications. Some accreditations are essential in order to be able to move forward. Things like cyber essentials for the nuclear industry. So that's what they'll run through there. They'll also there ascertain as to whether you actually have the capability to deliver. So they'll be asking you about previous examples of work. What you do find sometimes when a PQQ goes out is that you get maybe 50 plus companies who might not necessarily have any of the skills you're looking for, but just want to get their name in front of you as an organization. So they'll also wheedle those out as well, so that the only people that move forward to the next stage are ones that they can see have the right standing with regards to financial and insurance, etc., but also the ability through their previous examples to deliver the work that they're looking for. So that's your PQQ. Your ITT. This is the point where it's actually a proper tender. Now, something I should have said about PQQs, quite often when you register on what they call DPSs, like procurement portals, dynamic purchasing systems, that registration on there is your PQQ. So at that point, they collect all of that information. So quite often, if you're registered on a portal, that's your PQQ done and it goes straight to ITT. So the ITT is that formal invitation to tender for that piece of work. Now, you've said before about what you have done on your PQQ. Now they're looking at what you will do. So how you will deliver the work that is stated in that ITT. Now, ITT has a number of documents. It isn't just one document. So you'll have a really detailed scope of work. You'll have clear questions that they want you to answer, and also against those questions, the value of those questions. And when I say the value, that's a percentage. So a percentage up to the 100% is assigned to each question, so you will know what percentage that question is worth. You'll also have yes/no answers, which are pass or fail. There'll also be an explanation of the tender process and the instructions as well. And the instructions are really, really important because they'll put things like what font you need. They'll say what format you need it in, what your word count is. All that type of stuff will be in your instructions. And all of that will help for them moving forward. And also in there will be your evaluation criteria, which is what you will be marked against, which again, as we'll find out later, is a really important document. So that's your PQQ, your ITT, and the PIN at the start. And the next two are very, very similar. We have the RFT, which is a request for tender. Now, this is often used in order just to get proposals from potential suppliers, and allows the tenderer to look at the responses that are submitted and to evaluate them against each other. Whereas on the ITT, you're against the criteria. And then your RFP, again, this is a competitive bid process, but it's not as strict and closed as your ITT, and allows the buyer to negotiate with the supplier on terms and conditions and costs and so forth. Can we move on, please? So, preparing your bid. There are a few steps that are really, really essential when you're preparing your bid. The first thing, and I know it sounds really simple, is to read the instructions, read them carefully, and read them again. And not just the instructions, but all of the documentation that sits alongside. Make sure yourself and anyone else involved in the bid is reading it. Ask yourself the question, do you meet the criteria to deliver the contract? If you do not meet that criteria, you will not win that contract. So be really honest with yourself before you invest the time as to whether you meet the criteria. And do you have the relevant qualifications and accreditations? Like I said, these are pass-fail questions. So if you haven't got the requested accreditation and you put a bid in, they won't even read your bid and you will fail. So again, look at the accreditations. Have you got them? And if you haven't, and it's a bid you're interested in, maybe it's an accreditation you need to get in order to bid for future work. Do you have the resource to deliver the contract? Now, this is a tricky one, because no company will just have resource sitting there not being utilized. Equally, you don't want to recruit people on the fact that you've got a bid that you might win. So what I would do there, if you haven't got the resource, it's okay as long as you have a clear strategy in how you will get that resource and you have got some people you can second in. It really is the chicken and egg, and I would never say to anybody, get people all in ready at bid stage, because that's a really silly thing to do. And do you have the resource time to spend writing a bid? Now, writing a bid is an expensive thing to do, because you have your time of the people within your organization and also potentially time of an external then reviewing what you've done. So make sure you know that you've got the time in order to do that. And it's okay to make a no bid decision. Many companies go through this process on a number of occasions and decide to go no bid. So the bid and no bid decision is made based on all of those steps in the process. Can we jump on to the next slide, please? Okay, so the next piece is the clarification period. So from when the ITT is released, you have a certain amount of time where you're allowed to ask questions, but you're not allowed to pick up the phone and give someone a call. There'll be a process in which you have to submit your questions, and the questions, unless very, very sensitive, will be shared with everybody. Now, the reasons the questions and answers are shared with everybody is because you can't have a competitive advantage just getting that information yourself. So they have to make sure that information is available for everybody. So again, make sure you've read all of the tender documents before that clarification period ends, because after there, you cannot make any other questions. You just have to base it on what you know. Make sure you have a kickoff meeting and encourage everyone that's read the documentation on the team to raise any questions. So make sure they've looked at the documents and they're making those questions in their mind. And it could be really various things. It could be questions with regards to page counts and additional supporting documents. Sometimes they say about supporting documents, but don't make it clear whether it's in the word count. It could be a question on the technical scope. It really could be as broad, and you can ask as many questions as you want. Asking questions does not work as a blocker to you, and it doesn't make you seen as unfavorable. It's best to ask the questions and get that real clarity. Make sure you give clear roles to the team that are working on the bid. Again, ask those clarification questions. I can't say that enough. Make sure you ask the questions. Don't make assumptions. You need to make sure that you are really, really clear in what it is that you're having to do. Once you've done all that, start capturing your win themes and start your competitor analysis. Who else do you think might be bidding for it? What is their position? What are their unique selling points? What sort of how much do they normally charge? Where are you competitively with regards to cost? And then start your storyboarding on how you will answer the questions. Can we move on to the next one, please? Okay, so this is really wordy. Again, apologies. I'll pull out key things, but it's all really, really important stuff to make sure that you're writing a successful bid. So make sure that you are really concise and to the point in your answers. Don't write huge novels because the buyers have not got the time to read it. They're probably reading numerous bids. So you really need to make sure you stay in your word count and you make it as succinct and clear as possible. And you make it very clear on how you can meet the requirements and you answer the question. I would always recommend when you're structuring your question, structure it against the evaluation criteria. Guide the evaluator to the information they are looking for. On some of the massive framework bids, I know many people that evaluate these bids. I should have said I spent 5 years in Sellafield. And quite often, if it's a keyword they're looking for, they'll hit Control F, which is your find function, and just type in the word. And if that word isn't in your document, you can potentially lose the points. So use the language they use and guide the evaluator so they can clearly see the part of the criteria they're marking against and what it is that you're saying. You can never assume prior knowledge. So even if you've been working with this client for 20 years, they know that you're absolutely awesome. If you do not answer the question, if you do not write that in the bid, it makes no difference. They cannot score you on anything other that is written in that criteria. So do not assume prior knowledge. Make sure you write everything down and so they can evaluate it against that criteria. As I said, you're only scored on what you write. Another thing to think about is the evaluation criteria, again, is that it's usually done in a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fashion. And there's information. To score a 1, you need to do X, Y, and Z. To score a 2, you need to do X, Y, Z, and A, and so forth. Where a lot of people make mistakes is they go straight to number 5 for excellent, and they answer that criteria. But if they have other criteria in the other stages and you haven't answered it, then you will not score excellent. You won't even score the 3 or the 2 or the 1. So make sure you look at it really clearly. They are getting better now and they're not tending to do it so much, but historically, and it does still sometimes happen, for a 3 for good, they might say, you need to demonstrate how you have made that cup of tea. In number 5, they might say, you need to prove you make great cups of tea. And they prove they make great cups of tea, but they haven't said how they make that cup of tea. And because they haven't said how, they won't score a 5, 4, 3, it will be a 2. So it's really, really important that you read that criteria and you write against it. Don't use vague phrases. Don't say we think, we can, we believe. Be really informative and tell them what you will do, and make sure that you make them left with no doubt of the expanse of your capabilities and what your company can do. Word count, font formatting. I mentioned it before. It's really, really important. On the instruction documentation, it will tell you what font, sometimes what margin size, how many pages or how many words. If you go over that word count, they will not read anything beyond the end of it. So if they say 1A4 and you do 3, they will only read that first page. If it isn't in the right font or doesn't have the right margins, then it would be classed as an invalid bid and they wouldn't review the bid at all. So something that seems really simple is really, really important. So make sure you take time to look at that. Make sure you explain your proposition really clearly. Again, I keep on saying it, ensure you've fully addressed the specification and the evaluation criteria and that you've answered the question. So many people don't actually answer the question that is asked, and make sure that you've got it nice and logically for them to be able to follow. And make sure you say the how, not just the what. A lot of people forget the how, and that's where they can score the points. Can we move on to the next one, please? Okay, so submitting the bid. When it comes to submitting the bid, ensure your bid has been proofread at least twice. Now, I would always recommend that you get someone outside of your business who doesn't know your business to review it. Doesn't have to be someone that you pay for. It could be a friend. It could be someone that is a colleague from another organization that's not a competitor, whatever it might be. But it's got to be someone who doesn't know your jargon and doesn't know your story, because that way they will only base it on what they read, which is exactly what the evaluators will do. So getting that other person to proofread is really, really important. Make sure you hold a pink and a red review. So at a pink review, what you'll do is take your documentation and you would read it against the scoring criteria. So you'll be able to see there if what's been written actually hits the criteria. Now, if you are reading your own, you will probably be word blind and think that it is absolutely amazing in scoring a 5. So always make sure someone else evaluates your work. So you do that at the pink review, and that's where you take comments and look at what changes. And then your red review should be pretty much near the end, where you're just tweaking against what's been said. Make sure you demonstrate to them that you can do a perfect job and you're really confident. Have you been clear and to the point? Really, really important. Don't waffle, be clear and to the point, and ensure all your attachments are submitted. Now, I have worked with an organization, and in their past, when they went to submit the bid, they forgot to attach one policy. Because they'd forgot to attach that one policy, which was a pass-fail, they failed the whole bid. So even though they'd written a fantastic bid that would potentially have won the contract, because they forgot one attachment, and that was pass-fail, their bid was null and void, and they weren't able to even have their bid reviewed. So it's really, really important that you take time to attach everything and make sure everything that's requested has been submitted. Okay, can we move on to the next? So some common mistakes for you. I have said this throughout, but I know I've been talking a lot and you might have missed it. So I'm just going to make it really, really clear. Common mistakes: not covering all of the criteria in all stages. Like I said, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure all of the stages are covered. Copy and pasting from previous bids and forgetting to update the information. So, great story. I sometimes get asked to review bids. This company come to me and said, we've failed on this bid. I've got no idea why. Can you have a look at it? What they'd done is they'd actually copy and pasted from a previous bid, but hadn't even changed the company's name. So they were writing about a different company in the bid for another company. So obviously that is a massive mistake. What they'd also done is they hadn't answered the question criteria. So the question on the bid that they'd written previously was very similar to their new bid, but the evaluation criteria was absolutely different. So they just went, we've written this before, and copied and pasted that answer across, and they didn't score on it because they didn't follow the evaluation criteria. It's really, really important that you answer the question that is asked. If you are copying and pasting, you make sure that that information is relevant to that question, and that you change any company names or anything like that to make sure it is relevant to the bid that you are writing. Using negative language, writing a load of twaddle, which is no relevance. Be succinct. People love talking about their company, and they want to tell this evaluator everything that they want them to know. But what they want them to know isn't what's being asked for. What's being asked for is the answer to the question. So although I'm sure you have fantastic companies that you want to talk about, don't. Just answer the question. Another fail is not backing statements with experience and evidence. When evidence is asked, make sure you put evidence within your response. And the not proofreading, wrong font and size, like I've mentioned, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, no continuity of language, nonsensical, the sentence doesn't make any sense at all. And one thing I haven't written on here, which is a common mistake, more so with the larger bids, is different people answer the question. So the quality person will answer a quality question, HR a people question, social impact question. And what happens is there's no continuity and no golden thread throughout the bid. I was working with a large organization on a large framework, and within their capability and delivery answer, they talked about how they would bring a traveling workforce, how they'd got 100 people already, how they were all security cleared and they wouldn't need to do any recruitment. In their social value response, they'd said that they'd take 10% of the workforce through local apprenticeships, how they would recruit local people, and how they'd run school skills camps, boot camps, in order to bring people in to the organisation, and certainly those from areas of deprivation. So those two responses did not speak together, and had that gone into the client would have seen that there was no continuity, and it would make them question the authenticity of that bid. So it's really, really important to make sure you have a golden thread, numbers, commitments all tie up across all of the questions. Okay, on to the next one, please. Quick bid tips. As I said, guide the evaluator. Make sure that you mark it against the criteria so that they're marking against so they can clearly see. Structure your answer so that it addresses each point that appears in the question. Again, remember, a lot of evaluators have a lot of bids to read. They might go for the Control F, so make sure you use that language. Be definitive, write with conviction, be positive, focus on benefits and advantages, give evidence of successes, and again, use that firm, positive language. We will instead of we could, we know instead of we believe, we have instead of we know or we aspire to, and we will instead of we aim to. And that's really important. Okay, next slide, please. So that's the kind of main part with regards to writing a winning bid. But I want to talk to you about social value. And the reason I'm doing this is because most people score the lowest on the social value response because they don't know how to write it. So here, I'm not going to follow that link and bring it up, but there is something called the social value model, which is for the government. And it is what the government are looking for in their procurements with regards to social value. So if we can jump onto the next slide, what I thought would be helpful for you was to give you a little bit of an insight into each of Sizewell's social value themes, how they tie across to the social value model, because in the social value model, it tells you the measures that they're looking for and what types of things they're looking for in a response, which will really help you when you're authoring. So if you look here, Ashley kindly showed these earlier, so I thought it would be great to tie them in. With regards to the goal 1, the increased UK content. Now, obviously, Ashley spoke about what that means to the Chamber and what that means to Sizewell C from that strategic level. With regards to policy and government, this falls into theme 2, which is tackling inequality. And the policy is to increase supply chain resilience and capacity. And the things that they will measure is that spend analysis that Ashley spoke about, and also SME spend. So government does have a 33% target for SME spend. And I would imagine that Sizewell C will be looking at doing that as well, and hitting that. There'll probably be told that that's a necessity from government. So that 33% SME spend and that local spend. So that's what your goal 1 is pointing to. And again, within that document, the social value model, quick reference, it will tell you more about how you can write a response to that. So your goal 2, invest in education and employment skills. This falls into equal opportunity, and the policy is tackle workforce inequality. So the measures, what they'll be looking for here in your response is the percentage of underrepresented groups in your workforce. Now, underrepresented are those people furthest away from employment. So it might be people who have a disability. It might be people who have just left the criminal system, just come out of prison, or have a criminal record. It could be people who are fleeing domestic abuse. It could be care leavers. It could be returning mums to work, or returning dads if they're taking that time off with the children. So there's a lot of people that are classed as underrepresented groups, and that's what they're looking for. They'll be looking for the number of full-time employees from those groups, percentages of apprenticeships, and other training schemes like T-levels. T-levels, government are really passionate about at the moment. And how many of your employees have protected characteristics, things like LGBTQ plus community and so forth, and also equal pay. All of that will come into that goal 2. So goal 3, reduce the environmental impact of construction. That ties into theme 3, which is fighting climate change, and the policy is effective stewardship of the environment. So the measures, the things they'll be looking for on your response are things like your carbon reduction plans, environmental management systems, and also how you as an organization influence behaviors throughout your organization on this subject, but also throughout your supply chain. When writing social value, they often want you to roll it down into your supply chain. So how you will influence behaviors for yourself and your business and through your supply chain. And they'll also be looking at environmental volunteering. So what are you doing with regards to the environment and volunteering? Are you involved with tree planting? Are you involved in that sort of ilk of activities? So your goal 4, which is tackling your workforce inequality, that actually hits into theme 2 and 4 and 5. So it's 3 themes. So this is about tackling economic inequality, equal opportunities, which we've already talked about, and tackling workforce inequality. So this is about creating new businesses, new jobs, and also that underrepresented groups and tackling that workforce inequality, but also well-being as well. So the types of measures that you'll be looking at: number of jobs created, number of apprenticeships, number of training opportunities, number of people hours for interventions. And interventions is very much about going in and maybe speaking at schools, that type of stuff. And goal 2, which is well-being, we're actually going to touch on a little bit further. So I'll mention some more there. And then your goal 5, optimize opportunities for your local community. This is again falls into well-being, but the policy is improve community integration. And this is about the number of people hours spent supporting the local community. And this is about things such as volunteering and community-led initiatives that you are involved in. So that's a quick whistle-top mapping exercise for you to look at what this actually means from a government point of view and when you're authoring your bid. So we just go on to the next slide. Before we go on to talk a little bit more about wellbeing and me showing you a little bit about the criteria, I want to talk to you about embedded and additional. And this is really, really important. At your PQQ stage, this is your embedded social value. So this is about what you are doing as a business that currently generates social value. So your current activities. When you write an ITT, they are not interested in what you are currently doing because you are doing it anyway. What they are interested in is what they call additional. So this means, what are you going to do above and beyond what you're already doing as a result of winning this contract? So by winning this contract, what impact will it have on the lives of those beyond your company? What else are you doing? So that is the additional above. So embedded, what you're currently doing. Additional is what you will do if you win the contract. It has to be proportional to the value. So, don't think that you have to do everything if you're only getting a small contract. However, you might want to phase it up. So if the contract gives us this amount to spend, this is what we'll do. If we get this amount from it, this is the extra stuff we'll do, so they can understand what it is you're doing and why. So on to theme 5, well-being. This is about improving health and well-being. So this is what one of those pages on the social value model quick reference table looks like. I'm not going to read through it, but it really clearly shows the buyer how to write a question that tackles this theme. So to the left, on the model evaluation question and model award criteria, is what they will use as a basis to write their question. And then on the right-hand side, far right, is some of the reporting metrics. And then the middle is general information around this policy. So if you look at it with regards to health and well-being, some of the things they're looking at is things like the mental health at work commitment. So are you already signed up to that? Is it something that you could do? Also, there's thriving work. That's all about people with more than 500 employees. I would imagine for most people that isn't really applicable, but that mental health at work piece is really important. Some of the things that they look for are things like having nice green spaces that staff can go to, a good airflow through the office, really things that perhaps you wouldn't think about, but they're looking for. Mental health champions within your organization, all those types of things are really important. And if we just pop on to one more slide, this I've put in as like a little bit of a practice question, but this is a real question from a bid based on that well-being guide that you just saw. So the question, describe the commitment your organisation will make to ensure that opportunities under the contract deliver effective measures to guard and improve health and well-being, including physical and mental health in the contract workforce. So that is the type of question you're looking at. Max 2 A4 pages, Arial 11. And then this is the criteria. This is what you would need to structure your question against to make sure you get as many score as possible. So if you look at, if we look at number 3, for instance, they're looking for demonstrating how the organisation will guard and improve health and well-being. If there's no significant areas of concern, maybe limited to minor issues, the response shows sufficient competence demonstrated through relevant evidence and addresses most of the social value policy outcomes. So that's social value policy is the one I showed you before. That is what they're looking to really get from there. So if we go on to the last slide, there we go. That is me. I appreciate I spoke really quickly. I wanted to give you as much information as possible. It might have blown your mind a little bit. I might have been telling you how to suck eggs, but hopefully you've got a little bit of a value from that presentation, and would be more than happy to take any questions that you have later on. So I am now going to pass over to Paddy, who is going to talk to you about the work they are doing.
Thanks, Emma, and hello and good morning to everyone. So Paddy Bacchus, I'm a pre-construction lead as part of the Civil Works Alliance. I've been involved in the project for about 3 years now through the ECI phase. But before that, I mean, I've got lots of experience in bidding and developing tender responses for main contractors, probably going back over 15 years now. And back then when I first started, the bid writing was always part of the bid manager's job. So it's grown a little bit over the time, and we get specialists in sometimes for that. But it's not just about the main contractor element of that. We also have a lot of suppliers and subcontractors who support that process. So I also find myself reviewing a lot of submissions from the suppliers. And actually, I mean, sometimes that can be a real challenge if you don't follow some of the points Emma made earlier. But equally, it can be hugely beneficial and often improves my understanding of a scheme or a method or a specialist skill that the suppliers bring, and it builds your confidence in those suppliers as well. So really important to get those points right. Just a little bit about what we've been doing in the Alliance. So we've been developing it from the Alliance for the last 3 or 4 years now, forming the sort of programme, schedule and scope. And along with that, we've been doing procurement strategies, and we're now mobilising to site. And you'll see sort of activity significantly increase next year. Okay, next slide, please. Right. So just a little bit more about that. So the Civil Works Alliance, our main client of that is what they call the Civil Works Programme. That's the Sizewell client team. And we've been developing a lot of the early works packages. You'll see there on the scope is what we call the enabling works. There's an awful lot of other activities that's gone on to date so far in other advanced works, in the site establishment, clearing the site. And Sizewell have been placing all those orders. But as we move forward, you'll find that the main contractors will start placing those orders as well now. but we're still going to have to follow the Sizewell C's value for money criteria. I've just laid it out there a bit, the sort of core requirements. There's a bit of background noise there. If you can go on mute, thank you. So yeah, just the core requirements that we have there is the methods and technical requirements, health, safety, quality, and environment, all part of that. People and organisation will appear in certain tender responses. So we want to know your skills and the expertise you bring. And then, as Emma mentioned there, social value will be a mandatory piece of the evaluation. And then the final part of the jigsaw is the cost and pricing. But if I guess on some of the more complex delivery side of things, so not so much sort of supply only, but in the delivery contracts, 60–70% of the evaluation criteria could be in that sort of core requirements and social value piece. If you click on the next slide, please. Yeah, just highlighting that point there. So all of that part of there could carry 70% of the weighting of the marks, and that's all in your written submission. So very important. And I've just got a bit of feedback from some of the responses we've had so far. So in the social value, and it's just enforcing the point Emma made there earlier. So good examples are where they've been very specific regarding what they would deliver against those targets, and actually providing quantified sort of tangible data. So how many of something or how long they will supply that for, really important, and makes it easier for the evaluator to award marks on that. And not only that, it actually makes our life a lot easier when we go up the chain for governance from Sizewell, that we can show that we're hitting all the key targets that Sizewell are trying to deliver as well. So it just makes our life easier and in awarding those contracts to people. Where it's not been so good, we get sort of very generic or too corporate type responses, generalised there, lack a bit of detail, and sometimes that come across as sort of a lack of understanding. Can happen when you've copied things over from previous responses. So always important to go through those and make sure they're relevant to what we're doing here. And then the other thing, there's an example there. So whilst we're working in a nuclear environment, a lot of the works we're doing in the early stages aren't actually sort of nuclear classified, but you're working in that environment. So it's important to understand and reference what you may need in terms of nuclear licensing requirements. So some people in the response have said that they've worked on a nuclear project before, but haven't gone beyond explaining why that's relevant and what they bring and where their people might have certain skills that will support us in that. So they're all kind of key things to look out for. Next slide, please. Right, and I know Emma did her bit there earlier, but I was trying to sort of reinforce some of the key points from that and a bit more detail on some of those. So it's really important that you look at this value for money piece, because that's what we're devising the criteria against. And really important that you highlight and quantify the benefits. So what your solution provides in terms of cost, program, the social value, sustainability, or health and safety. So that's why we're saying quantify in terms of a time, a cost saving, a benefit to the environment. Really important you put those specific bits of detail in about your response. And then always provide evidence. So it's all very well saying you're going to do this, but to get full marks, you need to demonstrate where you've done the same or similar in previous projects and what the outcome of that was. So if you did something in reduced time or did it under cost, then say that and be specific about it. So just reinforcing that point around the methodology and process element, and I think Emma mentioned about the how. Yeah, anytime you're doing that and explaining how you're going to build something or provide something or a solution you put forward, they're the key points. How, why, what, where, when, and who. If you've got particular skills in your team, say who's going to do it, and then back it up with a bit of a reference or a pen portrait or a CV of that person. If they've got particular skills and expertise that are rare or you need, then add that too. With any program submissions, I mean, programs are very important on this project as it is on most of these sort of big programs. Really good practice to add a sort of summary program with that, so it's easy to understand and digest, and a bit of a narrative around that as well. So not all evaluators will be planning experts, so they need to understand that and get the key points to it as well. So that's just a bit of good practice. And if it's not given in the criteria or the word count, ask if you can add that, because that'll be well received. And then the other sort of key point on the technical element is the quality and competence and accreditations again, demonstrate with your business accreditations or your people accreditations and experience, put them in, explain your processes and systems and procedures you use to help deliver those things, and any sort of certification or accreditation that you need to operate in that environment or do that particular skill. Again, the social value piece is mandatory, and we get various, I guess, quality of responses, and looking back on some of the stuff we've seen recently, that is a significant difference in how we award the contracts. Those that score well they put themselves in favourite position to win the work, because a lot of the other elements are quite the same. So if you can demonstrate that you're providing and hitting top marks in those areas, it does make a big difference. And in those areas, I think sort of local spend and employment are obvious in that space, but also think about sustainability. So if you're providing something in your method or your product or your proposal, that does it reduce carbon or the number of vehicle movements required at the site? Can you reuse materials on the site, or could they be recycled elsewhere? If so, then quantify, explain, and say how much saving that you're doing the environment, and that will get you additional points and score. And then just to check the following, this is sort of my own sort of personal feel when I'm going through these. Emma did mention we'll have a lot of these responses to go through. I mean, there's going to be hundreds of suppliers on here, and if we're going to 3 or 4 bidders each time, that's a lot of material and submissions to review. So it's really important that you make it easy to follow. Make sure you've answered all the questions. Just the simple tips. Even put the question in the header, and any sub questions, put them in their sort of headers and break them down in a response that way. It just makes it easier for people to follow and understand where you're going with it. And always ask questions. If you're unsure or anything seems ambiguous about it, send in a tender query, ask us to clarify. We sometimes make mistakes. We might put the wrong thing in there. So just please ask questions, either it's on the portal or if it's via sort of any sort of mid-bid meetings or things. Do that, but put it on a formal submission as well, is always the best to get clarity on those things. And then again, yeah, so just I'd always use a contents page. If you've got particularly big submissions, it's useful to have a contents page. And then don't try and cram loads of text in. It makes it really difficult to read and understand. Really good to break out, put in subheadings, use images or call out boxes. If you've got a real impactful statement, put a box around it and frame it. And then most of these things will be read or reviewed on a computer screen. So put it in landscape if it's easier to read and understand in that aspect. And just a bit more feedback from our procurement guys. We're talking to them about this and what they really said. And again, they just said the simplest thing that will help them do their job is make it easy to follow. Provide clear referencing of appendices or graphics or images. So where you said something in your text, reference where it is. And put reference on the images, graphics, or appendices, just so they can flick through it and find their way around your submission much easier. And one other thing, I mean, I think a lot of the tenders to date have been in kind of a PDF submissions online. We're moving to the iValue platform, so you'll actually find yourself entering text directly into boxes on the online. So that'll make it easy to break down and follow for you guys to input and for us to review. But equally, there'll still be opportunity to put in supporting information, case studies, plans, and all those sort of things. So they'll come in a sort of an attached PDF document, and we'll still be able to use them. So those points still apply around making it easy to navigate and having contents pages and things like that. That's all still relevant. I think that's it for me now. So I'm going to hand you back to Ashley, but I'll be here at the end to answer any questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Paddy, and thank you to Emma as well. Brilliant. So I will just a couple of slides from me before we go into the Q&A. And just as a reminder to everyone, please, if you have got any questions, chuck them in. We've got a couple of bits we'll generally cover off. But before I do my next slide, just a couple of bits to pick up on what you've just heard. Because we've had some feedback, you know, we tried to get a lot of feedback from Sizewell on how some of our locals are getting on through PQQ and ITT stage. And we have had the point on policy statements missing on a couple of occasions now, where you've got local and regional businesses more than capable to complete a piece of work and simply haven't got through because of that pass fail. So it is vitally important when you're submitting this. I know it sounds obvious, but double check and check again to make sure you've got everything and it is uploaded correctly. And, Paddy's point a second ago, social value being that significant point of difference, that's music to the ears for regional and local businesses, because a lot of the time the scope of works is quite consistent. We know from some of the scoring that's already coming back on the PQQs and ITTs that everyone's scoring really, really well. So what it comes down to is those small points of differences, particularly experience, those that can be relied upon to deliver on time, on budget, safety, etc. But also then that social value and that local angle. And when we talk about those 5 pillars of social value that Sizewell have, that's the good thing, because local businesses can already deliver all 5 of those. So even when you get the larger organizations like the Alliance and some of the other tier 1 organizations that are going to come and have to deliver this social value in Suffolk, in the region, SMEs are the way forward, because actually they're already delivering it. So they're able to support those up the supply chain to deliver on all of these commitments. So that's very important. And Paddy also said about 60 to 70% on quality. We're seeing this already in some of the feedback we're getting around the road packages and the packages that are already out and in process on procurement, that they are heavily weighted toward the quality side with a good value attributed to social value. I will just quickly, there we go, next one. So just to quickly help you also then understand actually that process overview for if you enter into procurement with Sizewell C. A couple of these actually Paddy just talked about, but first stage, and help you understand, and many of you may have been on our webinar that we held on Tuesday, and we've got another one next week to do with Compete For. So the first stage of the procurement process, formal procurement process from Sizewell, which often our work is in advance of this, just so you're all aware and understanding our role, is that market engagement piece, which is done via Compete For. So Compete For is a national platform where the expressions of interest, all opportunities are loaded up to do with Sizewell C. Completely free of charge to sign up. And again, if you weren't able to attend Tuesday, it's on our website now. Please feel free to go and watch that webinar for some hints, tips and tricks, and get in touch with the team to ensure that you're in the right place. But a document will be on there, scoping out the works that are needed. And you'll normally have up to about 10 working days to respond to this. Now, bear in mind, just a quick point of note, working days include Saturday and Sunday on Sizewell. Sizewell C is a 365 day a year, pretty much project. So getting to grips with the fact that it will include Saturdays and Sundays, it will include evenings, it will include 6 weeks holiday. A project of this scale is constant. It is never turned off. So that brings huge opportunities, but obviously also challenges. And I think referencing Emma's point earlier of resource, it's important to understand that. But Compete For is that tool run by a company called BIP Solutions. We work very closely with them and are developing that site as much as we can as well to improve for local and regional businesses to be able to engage with. But it is that first point. And so it is vitally important, as we say, that businesses are signed up to Compete For to be aware of those opportunities. And like I say, other stuff to do with Compete For, you can catch up with our team and with our webinar. Should you be successful after expressing that your interest and be someone that the project or the lead tier 1 wants to learn more about, it will then go to the pre-qualification stage. So as it says on here, that is the part where it starts to capture the business's technical ability, capabilities, accreditations, financial, all the stuff Emma spoke about earlier. So it's still referencing the package of works, but it's actually more about your business still at this stage. You'll be given a little longer to respond. These are the sort of things you can get yourself ready with now in advance. And as Paddy alluded to, this will be done via a separate platform. So now taken off of Compete For and onto a platform called iValuer. What will tend to happen is that the procurement leads for that package will email you and they'll email the person that responded to the Compete For expression of interest and ask you to register on iValuer. Now, on both iValuer and Compete For, things you can do now, go into your spam folder, go into your spam settings on your email and make sure that any emails that include the words iValuer or Compete For are not put to spam. We get this a lot. And again, I'm trying not to reference too much the webinar from last week and next week, but it is worth for best practices, if you didn't sit in on it, to go and watch it to ensure you don't miss out on this stuff. But companies selected for PQQ will be sent the link, the login details, everything will be submitted through there. Should you then be from that slightly smaller list, be selected to go to the finite list for the invitation to tender, That will also be through iValuer. But as mentioned earlier, this is then when you actually start to get into the detail of the package. And you can see on there, you'll be shortlisted, formal, technical and price-based response, and you will be evaluated against various different criteria. Obviously, it mentions them on there, things like MEET and ESG. ESG is so important. You know, social value has been mentioned a lot today, but it is often that point of difference. When it comes to price and quality, there will be some standards. So it's how you can leverage the fact that you're a local and regional business to benefit you. ESG is that way. But making sure they are complete is vitally important. And then should you then be ultimately full successful, you will then go into contract award stage, working closely with Sizewell, where there'll again then be an additional couple of services that you will do this through, both for management, for payment. You've got a system called HICS, but also through actually the management and the ongoing reporting of those contracts, particularly around the KPIs. Because what you submit in your ITT will be part of your contract. So therefore, if you say you're going to use 75% local supply chain, fantastic, we'll work with you to deliver that, but it must make sure you need to be delivering that, reporting on that, and that will all be done through third-party software that obviously the procurement teams will support you through. Now, what is important is, should you get beyond expression of interest stage, that first stage of market engagement, is you will then start to have a direct relationship with the procurement leads. It was mentioned, I think, on Paddy's one. Should you then have questions through the PQQ and ITT stage, look, we're always happy to help, but you'd need to do it direct. You will have the ability on iValuer to raise questions, to raise issues. And if they're relevant, then the procurement teams will respond, and will respond to everyone, because it is important everyone probably has those same questions and gets those responses. It is a two-way conversation. And we say this a lot. We understand big projects like Sizewell can seem very, very scary. Big organizations, the alliances, for example, can seem very scary, but they are there to work with you because they want to work with local and regional businesses, because that's the commitments of the project. And you take the alliance as an example, they've signed up to those commitments as well. So it is about how we ensure any problems that local and regional businesses have, submit them, and then we can see how things can adapt and what feedback and what support you then need to be able to adhere and ultimately benefit the project by taking part. So we will go to questions. I've got a couple of bits, but I think we have got a question in there. So if we have missed the expression of interest for a package we are interested in or compete for, how do we get information on this when it's when this is out to PQ and ITT? Right. So if you didn't submit in time, then, and obviously you've missed that opportunity, we can help you keep in the loop on the various stages that it is at, because obviously if you haven't expressed your interest, you're not going to be engaged with the procurement team. So we can help you understand what stage that package is at various times. But then on compete for, what it will then also do is show when the awardee has happened, what the awardee information is. So if you're a business that could perform part of a role, so let's take, for example, what's maintenance is currently live. So if you're a business that can perform part of that, but either didn't express your interest in time, or potentially hasn't been took forward to PQQ or ITT because you can only perform a very small part of it and the project wants to identify those that can lead that piece of work, then stay engaged with our team. That's the key through that procurement process. And then when it comes to award time, or certainly ITT time, our work then restarts with those businesses looking to win that contract. And then through our collaboration and partnership, we will then start to help them identify who within the supply chain can provide part of that solution. So we're doing that at the moment with a number of the businesses bidding around the roads packages and things like the park and rides, the roundabouts and so on, where they're now at ITT stage. And so what they're doing as part of their bid is starting to engage with us to understand the local supply chain capability and capacity in these areas so that we can then support them. And then ultimately the aim is to bring you in the room. So Helen, excuse me, I don't know which company you're from, but whatever company you're from, we will help you identify that tier one contractor that you need to be talking to, or that they need to be talking to you, and then help you understand that process. But then all of that information is put on to compete for. And again, that's referenced on the webinar on Tuesday. So please do have a little look at it. But yeah, everything will be published because we want to make everything as public as possible. We're there to support you, but also not to hold you back. If you can go and make those relationships yourselves, then obviously we encourage you to do so. Another question here. Will you be sharing contact details for the team so that I can contact them, please? Yeah, obviously we will send out to everyone who's registered today all of the slides and the link to the recording, etc. The people who have spoke today. But also, you know, I can make sure, and Beth from our events team is on the call today. We can make sure we share some of the contact details for us at the chamber. You know, in the main, we need to be your first point of contact. Come through to us. We will help you and support you understand who to speak to, when to speak to them. And I say, if we ever tell you no, it's not because we're being difficult. It's not because we're trying to hold you back. It's because it's not the right time. And with a project the scale of Sizewell, it doesn't matter how many times I've presented and how many slides I've seen and how many pictures I've seen. When you get onto site, you only then truly understand the scale of this project and how many people are going to be working at any given time, and the amount of businesses that are going to be working at any given time and the sort of money that's included. So we will help you when it's right to do so. And in advance of your opportunity to win work and to work on the project, this is where you can start to do these things now, preparing for bidding, preparing your social value stuff. I know also, I think it was Emma spoke about influencing behaviours across your business and supply chain as being part of the social value metric. But actually, that's something across all of it when it's talking about quality. The project doesn't just want to see you've got an ISO. It wants to see that that ISO is embedded in your organization, that policy, that procedure is not just something that you've copy and pasted off of Google to make sure you've got something on your wall, that actually it runs through your entire organization. But also those tier ones and the project will support you on that journey. So if you're a business that doesn't have that yet, start that journey, but there's support out there. And we've got countless examples of businesses currently working on site who, when they started the process, maybe didn't have all of the policies and procedures in place that were needed, but had the ambition and drive to do it. And actually then by supportive mentoring by the tier one contractors, they've actually improved their business no end by working on Sizewell. And it's enabled them to win other projects, other pieces of work on other projects as well, such as other energy and infrastructure projects. So huge opportunities ahead in that regard. Just check the chat. No, that's fine. There was none on there, I don't think. Obviously, a slide deck, everything will come out, so that's good. If anyone has any other questions, I'm going to do a couple of other slides, but keep them coming on and I'll go back and reference them. But as we always say, if you've got questions outside of this that you don't want to ask today, you just reach out to our team and we will always happily answer whatever you have. So just a quick one. Obviously, we've spoken a lot. So the idea of today was really just a bit of a whistle stop. Few best practices, things to go away and just think about. All of our business support program, that is the idea, is that you go away and it gets you thinking. The actual proper support comes separately. You know, that could be through someone like Emma and her business, for example. It could be, you know, we've previously done one on net zero and sustainability. Well, it could well be that actually you then need to go and deal with Auditel or Wild East, who spoke on that one. So you as a business can reach out to them and come to an agreement with them and get some expertise and support. Now, what the Chamber actually is doing is also putting on some of the support that's needed as well. And our Innovation Skills Hub has actually got, coming up in October, a full one-day tender course. Now, this is 30th of October, 9 till 3, and it is there to really take, for example, some of the little snippets you've heard today and dive into that detail to really help you understand actual physical practicing of how to get yourself in the best place possible for bid writing. So we urge, you know, if you are a business that now is not traditionally used to writing big bids, particularly for maybe the public sector or large projects like Sizewell that do require a different skill set, then I would urge you to get in touch with the Chamber team and potentially take up the opportunity for that workshop taking place at the end of October. You've got the prices on there. And the reason we mentioned those is, and I spoke earlier about us identifying funding and training, because what is very, very important is actually through the work that we are doing is there is the eligibility for up to 40% reimbursement. So there's an energy readiness program that we've helped set up alongside West Suffolk College that can support a business. So not only are we attempting to identify where that training is, we're also then making sure that actually we can get it funded for you as much as possible. And that's, true of this training, and that's true of all different types. So if there are training schemes and ways to benefit your business that you can identify, and you want to find out, is there funds available? Again, reach out to our team. We are there to support you in understanding. So that's our team in the Sizewell C supply chain, but also the wider chamber team. Sarah, who runs all of our training stuff. It could be Alicia on the membership side, but they are all there to help you. And if you have a need for training, we can help you find out, is there a fund to help you pay for it? Sometimes these are funded after the training, sometimes they are in advance, sometimes they are match funding, but we will also always help you support. But they've got a few spaces left on that training in October, and hopefully if you've learned a few little bits today and you think, you know what, let's take this a little seriously, we want to win some work on Sizewell, then I have to encourage you. It's a brilliant course which we've already run a couple of sessions of, and we were only originally going to run a couple of sessions, and we've now put on a number of additional ones because of the popularity of it. So please reach out to the chamber team. And just as our normal little final reminders about the portals, we run the 2 portals. I know most of you who are going to be here today have signed up already, which is fantastic. Please stay engaged. Keep your information up to date with us. The amount of packages of work is about to accelerate quite dramatically. And ultimately, our role before Compete 4 gets involved is to work with the project to help them understand what is the capability and capacity locally to deliver on a piece of work. So if you're signed up to our portal and you say that you can dig holes, you say that you can cut back bushes, you say that you can supply food, then as soon as we get asked those questions, we will make sure the project knows you exist, and then work out whether that's through events, through webinars, roundtable discussions, or just general introductions one-to-one. It's vitally important we can represent you in the best way possible. So keep visiting the portals, because there's loads of information. Our previous webinars, for example, all of our events and news and opportunities are all listed. And Compete 4 being that platform where ultimately, if you want to win work on the project, then you need to be registered on Compete 4. So it is critical. Of course, the advantage of being registered on Compete 4 is you don't just have to limit yourself to Sizewell. HS2 use it. Heathrow Airport uses it. A number of large-scale national infrastructure projects actually use Compete 4. So it could well be that actually you're signing up for stuff to do with Sizewell, and other opportunities appear that you as a business, it just suits you and you end up taking advantage of. But it is vitally important. And what we will make sure is when we share these, you'll also get all of the links to both of the portals, plus some guidance and support, and even some information and links to the DCO portal for Sizewell C if you want extra information about specific parts of the project. But again, as per the little note at the bottom there, if you're unsure in any way, just come through to us as a team and we will support you and help you in whichever way we can. Oh, and excellent. Sarah's put her email also in the chat. So anyone interested in that training and skills development, both the bid writing, but actually more broadly, anything to do with training, then please do reach out to Sarah, because again, we can help either deliver it as a chamber, or importantly, identify those existing schemes that already exist in the marketplace that will help you get the training you need as your business. So I believe there's no more questions. So I'll say thank you. Thank you to our speakers, obviously, and for the team for organising today. As we always say, if you've got other needs, if there are parts of the business, there are parts of Sizewell that you need to understand more, that you want us to host a webinar on, a subject matter, etc., then just reach out to us and tell us. We're about to embark on a huge piece of work to look at our database and really look at where we are lacking of certain skill sets and accreditations and the needs of the project. So there'll be loads of these webinars in the future, and we'll also feature workshops, hopefully in-person workshops as well very soon, where we can really help you get to the bottom of what's going to be expected of you. But ultimately, we are there to support you, so we need to hear from you, and we want to hear from you to understand more. But yeah, so I think there is no more questions, so I'll say thank you very much. I hope you all have a smashing Thursday and look forward to seeing you soon.